Hi dear students, welcome back to biology class. In this video, let us continue with the agents of pollination. This is 9th video from the chapter 2, that is sexual reproduction in flowering plants. Dear students, we all know that some plants they require certain agents for the transfer of pollen grains. Mainly there are two types of agents which are used by the plants for the purpose of pollination. For our convenience, we have classified these pollinating agents into two types. One is abiotic agents, second one is biotic agents. The abiotic agents, mainly there are plants use two abiotic agents. One is wind and water. Wind and water, these are the two main abiotic agents which are used by the plants for the pollination. Then biotic agents, that is living organisms. The biotic agents includes insects, which are the dominating pollinating agents, then birds, bats, snails and larger animals including man. Now let us discuss in detail about how different types of pollinating agents they play a role in bringing out the pollination in various plant species. As I said, majority of the plants use biotic agents for the pollination and only small percentage of plants they use abiotic agents for the purpose of pollination. But remember one thing, whether the plants they are dependent on biotic agents or abiotic agents, that is both the agents, that is in case of abiotic agents where the wind and water play important role, but here pollen grains coming in contact with the stigma is a chance factor, because when the pollen grains are released in wind or water, the water currents carry the pollen grains in the different directions. Similarly, when the pollen grains are released in wind, they are dispersed in the different directions. Therefore, pollen grains coming in contact with the stigma is a chance factor. So, to compensate this loss or this uncertainties and associated loss of pollen grains, the plants produce enormous amount of pollen grains when compared to the number of ovules available for the pollination. Let us discuss the characteristics of wind pollinated plants. Pollination by wind is more common among the abiotic pollinating agents. The wind pollination also requires that the pollen grains are light in weight and they should be non-sticky, so that very easily these pollen grains have been transported through. In addition to this, there are well exposed stamens. You can look at this. You can look at this flower. This is a flower of wind pollinated plant. You can see the well exposed stamens and a feathery stigma. When the stamens are with a long filament, so that helps the anthers are exposed. When the anthers are exposed, at the time when the pollen grains are released, and these pollen grains are easily blown away in the wind. When the stigma is long and feathery, this feathery stigma, it helps to trap the pollen grains which are carried on the wind. Whereas in case of monocotyledonous plants, you might have observed the wind pollinated flowers often have a single ovules in each ovary, and numerous unisexual flowers are packed into an inflorescence. For example, in case of Zea mays, that is maize plant, the male inflorescence, that is known as tassel, female inflorescence, it is known as cope. The male inflorescence, they are with a large The stamens are with a large filament, long filament and well exposed anthers, whereas the female inflorescence, you might have seen in the corn cob, there is a thin filament, the silky thread-like structures have been observed, and these silky stigma and style that helps to trap the pollen grains which are carried in the wind. So here you need to remember the characteristics of wind pollinated plants. The first one is pollen grains are light in weight and non-sticky. The plants possesses well exposed stamens. Number 3, often large feathery stigma to trap the airborne pollen grains. Wind pollinated flowers have the single ovule in each ovary. The 5th point is numerous flowers packed into an inflorescence. And this wind pollination is quite common in grasses. Next we need to discuss about pollination by water. Pollination by water is quite rare in angiosperms or in flowering plants and is limited to only about 30 genera, that is mostly monocotyledonous plants. That is monocotyledonous plants, about 30 genera, they use water as a pollinating agents. But water is a regular mode of transport of male gametes in case of lower organisms, that is in case of algae, bryophytes and pteridophytes. They are dependent on water for the transport of anthrozoids or male gametes. Therefore, it is believed that some bryophytes and pteridophytes, that their distribution is limited because of availability of water for the transport of, because then these plants, they need water for the transport of male gametes and to bring the effect to bring the fertilization. Some examples for water pollinated plants are Vallisneria, you might have heard about it, Hydrilla, you might have heard about it, and these plants, in addition to this, the several marine seagrasses and Zoostera. But remember one thing, not all aquatic plants, they use water for the pollination purpose. For example, in case of water hyacinth and water lily, these the flowers are emerged above the level of water, and these are pollinated by the insects or wind, and in most like that of land plants. Here you need to remember one thing, the distribution of some bryophytes and pteridophytes limited. This is because the distribution of these bryophytes and pteridophytes is limited because of need of water for the transport of male gametes for fertilization. Now let us see how the pollination takes place in a submerged plants such as Vallisneria and seagrass. Look at this. This is the Vallisneria plant. Here the female flowers reach the surface of water, whereas male flowers, they are submerged in the water, and at maturity the male flowers, they are released by the plant and they float in water. Then some of the flowers, they succeed in reaching the female flowers. When they reach the female flowers, pollen grains are released on the stigma, and here the male flowers, they are carried passively by the water currents, and some of them eventually reach the female flowers and the stigma. Whereas in case of seagrass, the female plant, it is submerged in the water, and the pollen grains in such species are long ribbon like, and they are released in the water, and these pollen grains are passively carried inside the water. Some of them reach the stigma to achieve the pollination. Remember one thing, in most of the water pollinated species, the pollen grains are protected from wetting by mucilaginous cover. Next, let us continue with the pollination by biotic agents. The living organisms also play important role in bringing out the pollination. As I said, the insects such as bees, butterflies, wasps, moths, beetles, flies, birds, bats, including the larger animals like including human beings, they also helps the plants to bring the pollination. Majority of the flowering plants use a wide range of animals as a pollinating agents. Among those, the insects, particularly bees, are the dominating pollinating agents. Even larger animals such as primates, that is primates, arboreal animals, rodents, even reptiles have been reported as a pollinating agents in some species. The plants which are adopted for the pollination by using the plants which are dependent on the insects or animals for the pollinating agents, they need to give some rewards, and they have developed certain characters to bring the pollination. The characteristics of insect pollinated plants are: majority of the insect pollinated flowers, they are large, colorful, fragrant and rich in nectar. When the flowers are small, and these flowers they are packed in a cluster and they form inflorescence to make them conspicuous. The animals are attracted to flowers by odors, by its colors or its fragrance. The flowers pollinated by the flies and beetles secrete the foul odors to attract these animals. Then nectars and pollen grains are the useful floral rewards which are given to insects. Because of this nectar and pollen grains, the insects comes to collect these. At the same time, these insects, they are able to bring the pollination. When insects or small birds comes to collect the nectar and pollen grains, the body of the animals gets coated with these pollen grains, which are generally sticky, and these insects, when they reach another flower to collect the pollen grains and nectar, the pollen grains will be dusted on the stigma, or they come in contact with the stigma and it brings the pollination. In addition to this, some flowers, they give different floral rewards, such as, for example, in case of Amorphophilus plant, here the flower itself is very large flower, that is tallest flower. It is 6 feet in height. In this flower, some species, they provide the floral rewards, that is providing the safe place to lay the eggs. Okay, one example is, that is Amorphophilus. Then another example, that is, you might have heard about it, the Ecca plant and Ecca moth, they cannot complete its life cycle without each other. This is the Ecca plant here, okay, and this is the Ecca moth here. The Ecca moth, it enters into the flower and it lays eggs inside the ovary. At the same time, it brings the pollination. The larvae of these moth, they comes out when the seed starts developing. Is it clear? This is how the pollination takes place by the insects. And remember one thing, because of the rewards given by the plants, such as the insects, they go and visit the flower to collect the pollen grains and nectar. At the same time, these pollen grains are dusted on its body, and when they go visit another flower, these pollen grains come in contact with the stigma. This is how the pollination is being taking place. But there are some plants, there are some insects, those are known as pollen robbers. What are robbers? They simply take away the pollen grains and nectar. They simply consume without bringing the pollination. Many insects consume the pollen or nectar without bringing about the pollination. In such cases, look at this. This is an insect. Okay, this insect, it does not come in contact with us. It does not contact any reproductive part of this flower, but it makes the hole in the corolla. Okay, and it collects the pollen grains as well as nectar. So that such insects are known as pollen robbers. This completes the pollination part. Thank you.